My 7-year-old came home and saw a huge sold sign at the house. My mother told her that she is now homeless and should wait at the gate. She waited for 4 hours in the snow. When I found out, I just said, "Okay." 16 hours later, my parents received a call and started screaming. I didn't know any of that when I turned onto our street. All I knew was that my flight had landed late, my phone was on 2%, and I wanted nothing more than to get home, shower, and crawl into my own bed before my body realized how tired it actually was. I'd been gone for 5 days. Long meetings, polite dinners, the kind of travel where everyone keeps saying great conversation while checking their watch. I slowed as I approached the house, more out of habit than anything else. That's when I saw Ella. She was standing by the gate. Not playing, not pacing. Standing. Still. Like she'd been placed there and forgotten. For half a second, my brain tried to make it normal. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she'd just stepped outside. Maybe... Then I saw the way her shoulders were hunched, how her arms were locked tight against her sides. I saw the way she didn't move when my car stopped, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. I got out of the car. "Ella." She turned her head slowly, like it took effort. Her face was pale. Her lips tinged blue in a way that made my stomach drop. Snow clung to the knees of her pants. Her eyelashes were wet, either from melting flakes or crying. It was hard to tell. "Mom?" she said. It wasn't relief. It was a question. I crossed the distance in 3 steps and crouched in front of her, hands already on her arms, checking without thinking. Cold. Too cold. Not just winter cold. Outside too long cold. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice even because she needed even. "Hey, I'm here." She nodded once, like she was confirming data. Then she leaned into me, stiff at first, then all at once. Her body shook, not sobbing, shivering. "How long have you been out here?" I asked. She shrugged. "A while." That answer told me everything. I wrapped my coat around her shoulders, pulled her closer. My eyes flicked past her, to the front yard. That's when I saw it. The sign. Huge. White post. Red letters. Impossible to miss. Sold. It looked festive. Like a celebration, I stared at it for a second too long. My brain didn't want to accept it. It kept trying to reframe it. Maybe it was for the neighbor's house. Maybe someone put it there by mistake. It was very clearly in our yard. "Ella," I said, "can you tell me what happened?" She swallowed. "Dad brought me." That made sense. Brendan had Ella this week. We'd planned it that way because of my trip. He always dropped her off here when his time ended. He never stayed long. Conflict made him itch. "He dropped me off like normal," she said. "He waved and drove away." I nodded, like I was taking notes. "And then?" "I knocked," she said. "I knocked a lot." My jaw tightened. Grandma opened the door a little. Not all the way. "What did she say?" Ella looked down at her boots. "She said the house was sold." I waited. "She said I'm homeless," Ella said quietly, "and that I should wait at the gate." Something hot and sharp went through my chest, then settled into a very calm, very dangerous place. "Did she let you inside at all?" Ella shook her head. "She said I don't live here anymore." "And you waited?" She nodded again. "She said it would be better if I waited." I stood up slowly and took Ella's hand, turning us toward the house. The front door wasn't locked. That detail mattered. I didn't know why yet, but it did. I walked inside. The house smelled wrong. Cardboard, tape, cleaning spray, that strange hollow smell rooms get when they're being emptied. Boxes lined the hallway, some sealed, some half-packed. My name was written on one in thick black marker. Ella's on another. I felt something go very still inside me. Mom came out of the kitchen first. She looked composed, annoyed even, like I'd come home early and thrown off her schedule. Dad hovered behind her, holding a roll of packing tape. My sister Samantha sat at the dining table, scrolling on her phone, legs crossed, humming under her breath like this was a minor inconvenience. "You're back," Mom said. "Yes," I said. "I live here." Her eyes flicked to Ella. "She's inside now." "That's good." "You left her outside," I said. She had a coat. I looked at the boxes, the stripped walls, the empty space where Ella's drawings usually hung. "What is going on?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. "We sold the house." The words didn't land right away. They hovered, waiting for permission. "You did what?" "We sold it," Mom said, slower, patient, like she was explaining something obvious. "You refused to listen. You wouldn't help. So we handled it." Samantha finally looked up. "It's for the family." I let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You sold my house," I said. "You are not on the deed." Dad straightened. "We had a power of attorney." I stared at him. "For emergencies. For Ella. Not for selling my property." Mom waved a hand. "Details. You didn't need a house this big anyway. You travel. You're divorced. Samantha needs help." Samantha smiled, thin and satisfied. "You could always rent." I looked down at Ella. Her face was buried against my shoulder, fingers twisted into my sweater like she was afraid I might disappear. "You told my child she was homeless," I said. Mom shrugged. "It's not untrue. You made her stand outside in the snow. She needed to understand the situation." Something in me finally snapped into place. I had been shocked, confused. For a moment, even tempted to argue, but this wasn't an argument. It was a declaration, and declarations only go one way. "Okay," I said. Mom blinked. "Excuse me?" "Okay," I repeated. I didn't explain. I didn't ask questions. I didn't tell them what I was about to do. I turned and walked out. Behind me, Mom's voice rose. "Sarah, you can't just—" I closed the door. Outside, the cold hit my face like a slap. I kept a firm hand on Ella's shoulder and walked her to the car, buckling her in with hands that were steady now. Steady in the way you get when the decision has already been made. She looked at me, eyes wide. "Are we really homeless?" "No," I said. "We're not." I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Mom standing in the doorway, arms crossed, absolutely certain she'd won. 16 hours later, my parents received a call and started screaming. I used to think betrayal announced itself. A raised voice, a slammed door, something cinematic. Turns out, it mostly sounds like normal conversation, just repeated long enough that you stop hearing the warning underneath. After we left the house that night, after Ella finally fell asleep somewhere warm with her coat still on because she didn't trust the heat yet, I kept replaying the same question in my head. How did it get this far? The answer was uncomfortable, which is usually how you know it's the right one. It didn't start with a sold sign. It didn't start with snow. It didn't even start with money. It started with me being reasonable. I'm divorced. That's not a dramatic sentence. It's just a fact. Brendan and I figured out a schedule that mostly works. Ella spends time with him, I travel for work sometimes, and on paper everything looks stable. People love saying things like, "At least you're civil," as if that's a prize you win instead of the bare minimum. My job pays well. Not private jet well, but I don't panic at the grocery store well. It also means I travel. Conferences, meetings, the kind of trips where you pretend hotel coffee is fine because complaining won't fix it. About a year ago, my parents called with that tone. You know the one. Not quite desperate, not quite casual. Carefully balanced guilt. They were having a rough patch. Just for a bit. Just needed a place to land. Just one bed. Just until things stabilized. I said yes. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I could handle it. I told myself that family helped family, and that saying no would make me the villain in a story I didn't want to star in. At first it was fine. Awkward, but fine. They stayed in the guest room. They thanked me. They talked about their plans to move out like they were real plans and not bedtime stories. Then weeks turned into months, and the word temporary quietly packed its bags and left. They started rearranging things. Small stuff at first. Moving dishes. Commenting on my grocery choices. Asking why I did things the hard way. Dad started fixing things I hadn't asked him to touch. Mom started saying, "our house," without catching herself. I noticed. I just didn't do anything about it. Ella noticed too, though she didn't have words for it. She lived in the same house, but not quite with them. They weren't cruel. That would have been easier. Cruelty leaves marks you can point to. This was colder. Polite smiles. Short patience. Help offered like a favor that would be remembered later. They'd watch her if I asked. They'd pick her up from school if there was an emergency, but it always came with a sigh. A reminder of how busy they were, how much they were doing for me. Ella stopped asking them for things on her own. She stopped running to the door when they came home. She learned at 7 that love sometimes has conditions you don't get to negotiate. At the same time, my sister Samantha became the main event. Samantha getting married was treated like a national holiday. Every conversation circled back to it. The venue, the dress, the house she and her fiancé deserved, the life she was finally starting, and the grandchildren, not the one already sitting at the table quietly coloring, the future ones, the hypothetical ones, the ones that counted. Ella would be there, crayons spread out, while Mom talked about how excited she was to finally be a grandmother. I noticed. I still didn't say anything. Then the money talk started. It always began softly, suggestions dressed as concern. You don't really need a house that big, Sarah. You're gone so much. You could always rent. Your sister is just starting out. Eventually, it got less subtle. Refinance. Take out a loan. Sell and downsize. Help your sister. Help the family. I said no. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just no. I said I wasn't selling my house. I said I wasn't taking on debt so someone else could play homeowner. I said Samantha was an adult and would figure it out like the rest of us had. That was the moment things shifted. The house didn't feel the same after that. Conversations stopped when I walked into the room. Doors closed more often. Samantha stopped pretending to like me. Mom started using words like selfish. Dad talked about sacrifice. They both talked like my stability was a resource they were entitled to redistribute. And still, I stayed calm. Still, I told myself it would pass. Part of that calm came from trust. Or what I thought was trust. Because yes, there was paperwork. When you're a single parent who travels, you make contingency plans. I had given my parents limited power of attorney. Narrow, specific. The kind meant for emergencies, school forms, medical decisions if I was unreachable. Things like that. Not money, not property, not my house. I knew that. I was very clear about that. I didn't imagine they would see it differently. Now, looking back, I can see the arrogance building. The way they talked about handling things. The way they spoke as if authority came from age, not ink on paper. What I can't see yet, what I couldn't see then, was the exact moment they decided the rules didn't apply to them. All I knew, sitting in a hotel room later that night with Ella asleep and my phone buzzing uselessly in my pocket, was that they had done something they believed they were allowed to do, and they had believed it strongly enough to leave a child outside in the snow. That's the part that keeps replaying, not the sold sign, not the boxes, not even the word homeless. The certainty, the way Mom said it like a fact, not a cruelty, like gravity, like weather, like something Ella should have accepted quietly. That certainty is what scared me, because certainty doesn't apologize. Certainty doesn't back down. Certainty doesn't stop until it hits something harder. I didn't know yet what they had signed. I didn't know what they had shown anyone. I didn't know how far they'd gone or how sloppy they'd been. I just knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever they thought they'd done, they thought it was final. And people who think they've already won tend to be very loud right before they realize they haven't. We were already at the hotel when my nervous system stopped pretending this was survivable on vibes alone. It was one of those places that tries to look cozy by putting a lamp in the corner and calling it a personality. Beige walls, beige carpet, a framed picture of something that might have been a flower if you squint hard enough. The kind of room where your thoughts echo because there's nothing else to do. Ella was asleep in the bed by the window. She'd kicked one sock off in the night, like her body still believed it was at home and safe enough to be messy. Her coat was folded at the foot of the bed, too neat. Not laundry neat, emergency neat. I sat in the other bed with my shoes still on because I couldn't shake the feeling that if I took them off, I'd lose momentum. And right now, momentum was the only thing holding me upright. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Not because I'm mature, because I'm strategic. If I saw my mother's name on the screen, I would do something that would require a lawyer for a completely different reason. I stared at Ella for a minute. Her eyelashes, the faint pink line across her cheek from the pillow, the way she held her hands curled close to her chest like she was keeping warmth in. Then the question I'd been skirting around all evening finally caught me by the collar. How long was she outside? I knew a while. I knew too long. I didn't know the number, and the number mattered. I slipped into the bathroom and closed the door softly. The mirror showed a woman who looked surprisingly normal for someone who had just learned her parents were capable of telling a 7-year-old she was homeless. I called Brendan. He answered fast, like he'd been waiting for it. "Hey," he said. His voice was cautious, but not defensive. That was new. "Hi," I said. "What time did you drop Ella off today?" A beat. I could hear him thinking, not stalling. "About 2, he said. 2-ish. Why?" I did the math in my head. I got there a little after 6. My throat tightened, but my voice didn't change. "Okay," I said. "So she was outside for 4 hours. "What?" His voice jumped. "No, your mom opened the door." "I'm not asking what you saw," I said. "I'm asking what time you dropped her off." He exhaled sharply. "Around 2. I swear." "Okay," I repeated. Silence stretched. Then quieter. "Sarah, I didn't leave her with a stranger. I left her with your mom. She was at the door." "I know," I said. And I did. I wasn't calling to make Brendan the villain. He's a lot of things, avoidant, allergic to conflict, the human version of I don't want to get involved, but he's not psychic. He didn't know my mother would turn a normal handoff into a survival experiment. "I'm not blaming you," I said, because he needed to hear it and because it was true. "I just needed the time." Another exhale. "Okay." "You saw Mom open the door," I said. "Did Ella look okay when she got out of your car?" "Yeah," he said immediately. "She was fine, bundled up. She waved at me." I swallowed hard. "Did Mom say anything?" "No," he said. She barely looked at me, which honestly felt like a win. I almost laughed. It came out like air. Same, I said. He hesitated. Is she okay now? She's asleep, I said. She ate. She's warm. Thank God, he said, and for once it didn't sound like a phrase. It sounded like a feeling. Brendan, I said, and I kept it calm. If anyone contacts you about this, my parents, Samantha, do not engage. Just tell me. I won't talk to them, he said. I'm not stepping in that. Smartest thing he's ever said. Okay, I said. Thanks. We hung up. I stood in that bathroom for a moment, palms flat on the sink, letting the number sit heavy in my chest. 4 hours. Then I went back into the room, checked Ella again, and finally took my shoes off like a person trying to pass for human. In the morning, Ella woke up hungry. That mattered. When kids stop being hungry, something's wrong. I want waffles, she announced, like she was making an executive decision on behalf of the whole family. Of course you do, I said. This place charges $8 for bottled water. They can afford waffles. She smiled, small but real. We ate in the hotel breakfast area, surrounded by other people pretending they weren't also in temporary lives. I let her drown her waffles in syrup because I wasn't interested in being the health police today. Today, I was the stability police. Back upstairs, I put cartoons on for her and handed her the remote like it was a sacred object. Stay here, I said. I'm making a couple calls. Are you calling Grandma? She asked. No, I said. I'm calling adults who don't think a gate is childcare. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded like she liked the sound. I stepped into the hallway for the first call. I called the non-emergency line and reported what happened, cleanly, factually, without dramatics. My daughter is 7. She was denied entry to her home. She was told she was homeless. She was left outside in snow for approximately 4 hours. The woman on the phone went quiet, then asked for details in a careful voice. Address, names, times. I gave her Brendan's drop-off time and my arrival time. The number landed with more weight when I said it out loud. She gave me a case number and told me an officer might follow up. Thank you, I said. When I hung up, my hands were still steady. It wasn't catharsis. It was documentation. I went back inside. Ella was on the bed, watching cartoons like her brain had decided it would rather live in an animated universe where problems get solved in 11 minutes. Did you do the call? She asked. Yep, I said. Grown-up paperwork call. She thought about that. Are we still homeless? No, I said. We're just temporarily paying for a room with a flower painting. She looked at the wall. That's not a flower. That's what makes it art, I said. She giggled once, and I held on to that sound like it was a receipt proving we still existed. Then I made the next call. A colleague had sent me a lawyer's name with the kind of message that tells you it's serious. Call him. He moves fast. We did a Zoom consult because speed mattered more than ambiance. He looked like someone who owned multiple suits and had never once smiled by accident. Sarah, he said. Tell me what happened. Short version. I gave him the short version. He didn't gasp, didn't do sympathy face, didn't say, I'm so sorry. He just started sorting facts like they were files. Do you own the house? He asked. Yes, I said. Sole owner. Did you sign anything authorizing a sale? He asked. No. Are your parents on the deed? He asked. No. He nodded once. Then the sale is either not real, not finished, or not lawful. Possibly all three. I told him about the limited power of attorney. He asked, Does it include real estate transactions? No, I said. It was for emergencies and Ella-related stuff, not property. Good, he said. Then we treat anything involving a sale as suspect until proven otherwise. I watched Ella in the background, legs swinging as she ate cereal from a cup like a tiny raccoon. What happens now? I asked. I'm going to identify the transaction, he said. If a sold sign is up, there's a realtor and an escrow or title file. I'll contact them and put them on notice that the owner disputes authorization. That typically triggers an immediate hold. Typically, I repeated. He gave the smallest possible shrug. People get very cautious when the word fraud gets anywhere near their paperwork. Paper has a way of ruining confidence, I said. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement that I was at least functional. Do not contact your parents about this, he said. Do not threaten. Do not warn. Let them be surprised. Finally, I said. A plan that matches my personality. He told me what he needed from me. Basic proof of identity, ownership info he could pull from public records, and said he'd start immediately. When the call ended, nothing had changed in the room, but something had changed in the air, because now the situation had left the family ecosystem and entered the adult world, where people don't care who your mother is. They care what you can prove. I put my phone down and tried to breathe. I didn't have to wait long. Mid-afternoon, my phone started vibrating. Dad called. Mom called. Samantha called. Over and over. I didn't answer. A voicemail came in from Dad first. His voice sounded strained, too high. Sarah, we just got a call. They said the file is frozen. They're asking questions. This is ridiculous. Frozen. A second voicemail followed, Mom this time, furious in that clipped way she uses when she's trying to sound in control and failing. They're accusing us, she hissed. You need to fix this, immediately. Then a text from Samantha. What did you do? I stared at the screen. I didn't know who had called them yet. I didn't know what exactly had been said, but I knew this. Someone official had just told my parents no, and it had hit them like a car crash. Ella looked over. Mom? Yeah, baby. Are they yelling? I exhaled slowly. They're upset. Why? Because they thought they could do whatever they wanted. Because they thought rules were for other people. Because they thought a 7-year-old was an acceptable casualty. But I didn't say any of that. Because they don't like being told stop, I said instead. Ella nodded once, like that made perfect sense. That night, she fell asleep without her coat folded like a shield at the foot of the bed. I watched her for a minute in the dim hotel light, then turned my phone off completely. I didn't need to hear them scream. I already knew what it meant. They had started the day certain, and they were ending it afraid. I met the lawyer 3 days later, not because I wanted to wait, because this is how long it took for paperwork to catch up with audacity. His office was quiet and aggressively normal. No leather chairs, no dramatic city view. Just a desk, a printer humming in the background, and a man who looked like he'd seen this exact situation enough times to be tired of it. He didn't ask how I was. Good lawyers don't. He opened a folder and said, "Here's what happened." "Thank you." A sentence with an object. "Your parents listed the house with a realtor," he said. "An offer came in. They accepted it. That's when the sold sign went up." "So it wasn't actually sold," I said. "No," he said. "It was under contract. That's not ownership transfer. That happens at closing." Good. Words with definitions. We're already doing better. "When I contacted the title company handling the transaction," he continued, "I told them 2 things. First, that you are the sole owner of the property, and second, that you deny authorizing any sale." "And that's when they called my parents," I said. "Yes," he said. "Because from their perspective, something was very wrong." He flipped the folder toward me. Inside were copies of emails, clean and boring and devastating. Title ran ownership, he said. Your name came up. Sole owner. No co-owners. No exceptions. That alone stops a transaction until it's explained. So they asked for the explanation, I said. They did, he said. They asked your parents to prove they had authority to sell a house they don't own. I leaned back. And they couldn't. They tried, he said. That's the problem. He slid another document across the desk. I recognized it instantly. My name, my signature, and a scope I had never agreed to. This, he said, is the power of attorney they submitted. I read it once. Then again. Authority to sell real estate. Authority to transfer ownership. That's not what I signed, I said. I know, he said. The original POA you described doesn't include this language. This version does. So they added it. Yes. After the fact. Yes. I stared at the paper, oddly calm. So when escrow called them, they weren't just told we need clarification. They were told, this looks wrong. He nodded. Exactly. The moment you disputed authorization, and they produced a document that expanded their authority beyond what you granted, the transaction triggered a fraud review. And that's why they started screaming. Yes, he said. Because they realized professionals were now looking at what they did. I laughed once, quietly. My parents have never reacted well to supervision. He closed the folder. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a material alteration of a legal document. That's forgery. There it was. Plain. Unceremonious. Final. What happens now? I asked. We separate the issues, he said. You already reported the endangerment of your child. That was correct. This is different. He explained it without theatrics, a separate fraud report prepared and submitted through his office. Notices sent formally. The power of attorney revoked in writing. The transaction terminated. And my parents? I asked. They are no longer treated as decision makers, he said. By anyone. I signed what needed signing. Revocation, confirmation, dates, initials, all the things that look boring until you need them. When I stood to leave, he said, One more thing. Your parents are still in the house. Yes, I said. That's a problem. He nodded. I can formally revoke their permission to stay and issue a notice to vacate. If they don't leave, enforcement follows. Do it, I said. Once that's done, he added, your daughter shouldn't return until the house is clear. She won't, I said. He nodded again. That's the right order. They did not leave voluntarily. Of course they didn't. My mother called first, furious and wounded in equal measure. Dad followed with apologies that didn't include responsibility. Samantha sent messages that suggested she believed volume could reverse reality. I didn't respond. Blocking people is not immature. It's efficient. The notice to vacate expired. Enforcement was scheduled. I didn't bring Ella. She stayed with a friend, safe and distracted, unaware that her grandparents were about to experience consequences for the first time. I parked down the street and watched. The deputy knocked, explained, waited. My mother argued. Dad hovered. Samantha appeared, crying loudly enough to be heard from the sidewalk. None of it mattered. When they were finally escorted out, my mother spotted me and made a beeline like she still believed proximity was power. I hope you're proud, she said. I considered it. I'm relieved, I said. Pride can come later. The deputy closed the door behind them and handed me the keys. It's secured, he said. I nodded. Thank you. I brought Ella home that evening. She stood in the doorway, looking around like the house might argue back. "They're gone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "They're gone." She took off her shoes and placed them by the door, slowly, carefully, like she was reclaiming something. That night, she slept through without waking once. I stood in the hallway and listened to the house settle. There were still reports in motion, still fallout coming, still people somewhere who thought this had happened to them, but the house was quiet, and my child was safe. If they ever try again, I won't explain. I'll just let the paperwork do what it does best. Say no! 6 months later, the paperwork finished what I started. My parents were charged with forgery and child endangerment. Probation, heavy fines, mandatory classes they still swear were unnecessary. I'm sure the judge appreciated their feedback. We don't speak anymore. No calls, no updates, no family meetings. Silence turned out to be very efficient. Ella is thriving, sleeping through the night, laughing easily, calling our house home without hesitation. As for me, I sleep just fine. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.